How I was fooled by conservative economists. All right. Now, this does not mean left-wing economists are good. They're not. They're just absolutely, most of them are absolutely evil. They're pushing socialism, communism. This does not mean right-wing economists are bad either. I'm talking conservative economists, the Milton Friedmans of the world. I love Milton Friedman. Got a signed paper from him, signed book, Free to Choose. At the end of the day, though, conservative economists have been putting a bag over our heads for years just because we don't like the left. So that must mean we are on the right for conservatism. Here's the problem. Remember that there was a guy 10, 15 years ago, a CEO who did a business, some kind of payment processing business in Seattle or something like that. I can't remember. It was out there in Washington someplace. And he said, we're going to all make the same wage, $70,000 a year, all of us. And everyone on the right, to include your old buddy Josh, was like flipping out. This guy, and I remember Rush Limbaugh said he was a socialist, and blah, 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 blah. We all took to the proverbial streets and lambasted this guy, hope he failed and all that. And we actually were gleeful when they charged him with some kind of assault thing. I don't know what the hell it was. It probably was fake, but I don't know. Anyway, I think he was actually proven to be okay, because now I don't think he's the CEO of that company anymore, but he's like an integral part of the company, if memory serves. I did a cursory look at what happened in this company. I didn't go down to the rabbit hole. But anyway, so the $70,000 was the salary that everyone's going to make who worked there. And now it's gone up to $80,000. The company's still working, making money, hasn't gone bankrupt or anything like that. I don't know if it's getting government subsidies from the Washington. I have no idea. I don't know. But the interesting thing was, so I saw that's interesting. I thought for sure they would have shut down by now, right? Because, socialism never works. And if it's socialist, it's certainly not going to work. But it didn't shut down. And I don't know if it's thriving, but I know the minimum pay is $80,000 a year. The thing that jumped out more than anything, though, this is one of the things they put in as they're proud of. The number of babies being born to employees has grown significantly. And I said, first of all, I said to myself, why was I so eager for this company to fail? Why? A, why did I care? B, if he can get by offering higher wages, why does it matter to me? It's like the weirdest thing, man. It's kind of like when people say, we can't raise taxes on Elon Musk. I said, why? Oh, they're going to come after you next. I said that. Anyway, I never understood why I was so mad about that. Not mad, but just like, this guy, a socialist. He wasn't a socialist. He did not have, the government did not own the means of production of this guy's company any more than the government owns the means of production for Boeing, as is out there, trying to sell airplanes to Qatar. Anyway, it was weird. So it turns out the company still, looks like it's probably thriving. But again, the most important thing was the number of babies being born per employee. And I thought that's very interesting. Why? Because instead of having a median household income at $80,000, and I don't know what it is in Washington, we'll just say $100,000, median household income, I don't know. But now the wages, remember the wages aren't the median household income. Wages just per person is about $50,000. So the median wage in the United States is about $50,000. Now that does not include benefits and stuff like that, I grant you, but still, that's the median wage. A lot of people, Google, AI does it all the time. They mix up wages with household income. You can't do that. Anyway, the point being is, if you're a working stiff and you're like, I'm making $80,000 a year at this company, that might allow your wife to stay home to raise the children. Isn't that interesting? Because one of the reasons we don't want two income households is such a bad thing is because now both people have to work, which means they have to hire health care or daycare and stuff like that. They're like, if I got to pay for daycare, what's the point? You see what I'm saying? Essentially, the woman's work is being consumed in taxes and daycare. What's the point? Anyway, so why was we so hipped on that? It's weird. On top of that, my own research showed me that in the 1920s, Calvin Coolidge, Silent Cal, who all conservatives love, turns out he had massive tariffs were signed into law. On top of that, massive restriction on immigration. Massive. And the 1920s boomed. Now, you can say, well, it led to the Great Depression. Yeah, but you don't know the history of the Great Depression in terms of what caused that, which would be the huge amount of leverage that was taken on during World War I to feed the world as the worlds were were fighting all over the place because some crappy war that we should never got involved in, Woodrow Wilson. And when those prices start plummeting because the world started to get back on track, the farmers they were like, dude, mass deflation because they were getting their farms taken away from them. The price of the goods was going way down because we had to compete with European farmers again. And when you have more production and the demand hasn't jumped up that much, guess what happens to the price? That's exactly what happened. Over leverage, man. And guess who's pushing the over leverage? Oh, it was the government in the 1917, 18, 19 to buy more land and increase production. And then on top of that, you had a lapse in monetary policy. So basically what happened was the Federal Reserve said, we're going to restrict the monetary supply as opposed to inflating it as a way to keep inflation and speculation under wraps. And of course, that was a doomsday scenario. You can't do that. You got to inflate the money supply when times are south. That's just a fact. And then again, all conservatives say, oh man, money supply is going to mass inflation. Oh my goodness. Anyway, and then I'm starting thinking, not the minimum wage, because I don't want a top-down regulation on governments, but how do businesses increase earnings? And earnings are profits, just all there is to it. Well, the obvious way to increase earnings is to do what? Increase the level of compensation. People are like, what? You're going to increase compensation, that's going to reduce earnings. You're going to have to raise prices to cover that reduction in earnings and to cover the net profit margin that you have. You'll have to raise prices, or you have to reduce payroll, or you're going to reduce profits. All these things are going to happen when you increase compensation. Oh, really, my conservative friends? What's the turnover rate in U.S. employees? How much does that cost companies? Turns out many studies on this, many studies. About $1 trillion a year is what the cost is to companies on turnover. What's the number one reason? Was an Asian guy say Lollapalooza. I saw that in the 19 World War II propaganda against the Japanese. It says, oh, you'll see a Chinese guy and a Japanese guy. Tell the Japanese guy to say Lollapalooza or something like that. It's actually funny as hell, man. It's a propaganda piece from the U.S. government about how to spot a Japanese guy. I don't know if Chinese people can say Lollapalooza. I don't know. But it's kind of funny. Anyway, so if we actually look, turnover is a huge hit to earnings. Huge. $1 trillion a year. The number one cause for turnover is lack of compensation. I think one study said 75 or 74% of all turnover was due to being undercompensated. And then I was reading this article that this guy had written in 2013 from the EBRI that said only, 1 in 5 people throughout history, the private American modern history, going back to like 1940 or 50, actually stayed at one company for 25 years. And he was saying in the context of a bill to get a pension from that company. He said only 1 in 5 did. Stayed at one company for 25 years. So job shop and job ship and jumping has been notorious for many, many years. What's the way to avoid that? Oh, pay your employees more, a la that company in Seattle. I can't remember the company's name. But they said their turnover rate has gone way down, satisfaction gone way up. Now, people say, well, this is why it's not socialism, by the way. And this is why you can't have a top-down from the federal government say we're going to mandate minimum wage. Because then you got sockers, people who don't want to work. And then you got people like my wife who works her ass off, and she'll make up for the people who don't want to work. This is what happens. And I have a child in a company, and she says, man, I work at these companies, and some guys are just sitting on their butts, not doing anything, and us who take pride in our work, we have to pick up the freaking literal dog poop because they're not doing anything. They're all getting the same. I said, yeah, that's how socialism works. Reward the lazy and punish the punish the freaking hard work, and we don't want that from the federal government saying everyone's going to get $70,000 minimum wage. But why don't conservative economists start pushing the idea of increasing salaries to reduce turnover and then retain employees and not have an expense of turnover? How much does it cost to lose a guy with his skill set? On top of that, you lost that guy's productivity. On top of that, you got to spend time to go get another person and train him up. How long does that take to do? How much money did you lose to do that? Why don't conservative economists ever talk about this? They never do, though. They always talk about, net profit margin. Okay, well, what's the leakage out the door is what? One thing is turnover. How can we reduce turnover? Oh, we don't have enough children being born. How can we increase freaking babies being born? Maybe get the woman out of that workforce and get her in the home so she can raise the children as her maternal instincts dictate to her, for sure. But we can't afford it. Yeah, you can't afford it because we got the two-parent income trap is what Elizabeth Warren talked about in 2005. So a right-wing economist would push for tariffs, would push for low immigration, if any immigration. I'd say net negative immigration now. Would push for higher wages for employees. That's what a right-wing economist and conservative economists don't. And then on top of that, a right-wing economist would say, hey, monopolization is a bad thing, by the way. And right-wing conservative economists say, hey, man, if Amazon is so good and productive, we should give them everything. They're better. They're efficient, blah, 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 blah. That's not good for you. That's just not good. We're seeing economists on the conservative side, left and right, by Robert Bork and on, and he's not necessarily an economist, but he said, hey, man, let the markets rule. And if the market rules that one company wins, that's okay. No, that's not good. So a conservative economist, keep your wages low as you possibly can. Increase your profit margins without seeing the counter effect of that, the unintended consequence. Conservative economist, high immigration is good. Okay, because we can keep our wages low. Conservative economist, tariffs are bad. Oh, they are? Even though you're one of the best guys in the history of the conservatism, Calvin Coolidge had signed tariffs, or he was at least presided. I don't know if he was president when his tariffs were signed in 1922, but he presided over high tariffs. Interesting. Conservative economists never increase the monetary supply, ever. Okay. We got plenty of examples where not doing that led to huge deflationary politics or deflationary economies. Free trade is good at all times. It's just not. Free trade is not good, man. Not good at all times. It's not. If you can't produce something, sure, but we can't produce our own ships. We can't produce our own steel. We can't produce our own magnets. We can't produce our own peaches. We can't produce our own steaks. Crazy. Again, this doesn't mean left-wing economists a la socialism is good or Marxism. It's just there's got to be a third way. And the third way is right-wing economists, populist economists. All right. Putting America first. All right. God bless.